On the coldest night in Helsinki, a silent maid stood barefoot in the snow, clutching a small wooden toy car. Moments earlier, billionaire CEO Dashiell Vance had thrown her out without mercy. He thought she was useless. He thought she was hiding something. What he didn't know was that she had just escaped the same men who kidnapped his son. And now, the only person who could lead him to the truth was the woman he had just abandoned to freeze. But by morning, she was gone. The grandfather clock struck midnight in Dashiell Vance's office. He rewound the security footage for the 1,000th time. 127 days since his 6-year-old son Callum vanished. The timestamp glowed, 3:47 p.m., his boy climbing into a black SUV gone. Dashiell's reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a stranger, hollow eyes, clenched jaw, a man carved from ice and fury. Outside, Helsinki glittered under fresh snow, beautiful and merciless, just like what he'd become. The police had given up. His wife had left. Everyone whispered that children missing this long don't come home, but Dashiell refused to accept it, so he'd fired anyone who showed weakness, suspected everyone, trusted no one. His mansion had become a tomb. Then the security monitor caught movement. His blood froze. Callum's bedroom. The room he'd ordered sealed. Someone was inside. Dashiell zoomed the camera feed. The new maid, Bryn something, holding Callum's wooden toy car, the one his grandfather had carved, the one Callum had clutched every night before bed. Rage exploded in his chest. He was down the marble staircase in seconds, Italian leather shoes echoing like gunshots. He threw open Callum's door so hard it cracked the wall. Bryn stood frozen, the toy cradled in her palms like something sacred. She was younger than he'd noticed, mid-20s, delicate features, blonde braid coming loose. Those strange grey eyes widened as he approached. "What the hell are you doing in here?" His voice could shatter glass. "This room is forbidden." She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her hands moved in frantic gestures he didn't understand. Didn't want to understand. "I don't need excuses." He ripped the toy from her hands. "You're fired. Get out of my house, now." Bryn pulled a small notebook from her apron, scribbling desperately. Dashiell slapped it away. The notebook skittered across hardwood, pages fluttering. She stared at him, and something in her eyes made him falter. Not fear, pity. Then she walked past him, spine straight despite her trembling hands. Dashiell followed her to the service entrance. Outside, snow was falling harder. The temperature had dropped to -15. Bryn gathered her threadbare coat and worn boots with quiet dignity. "If I ever see you near this property again," he said coldly, "I'll have you arrested." She turned once at the door. Her lips moved. Silent words he couldn't read. Then she stepped into the winter night. Dashiell slammed the door and returned to his office, anger warming him like whiskey. He didn't see the paper that had fallen from her notebook, a detailed drawing of Callum, alive, recent, and one shaky word in Finnish, Pelastaka. Save him. Bryn's bare feet left crimson prints in the snow. Security had kept her boots. Their smirking faces said everything their mouths didn't need to. The invisible girl, the mute freak, nothing. December wind sliced through her thin coat like razors. Each breath crystallized in the air, and her fingers had gone numb around the notebook pressed to her chest. The notebook that held everything, everything she couldn't say. Everything that could save Callum Vance, if anyone would just listen to a girl without a voice. She stumbled through the West End district, past mansions glowing with warmth and life, perfect families visible through windows, safe, together, whole. Everything she'd lost, everything Dashiell was about to lose forever. Her body screamed for shelter, but she couldn't stop, because they were hunting her. And now, unexpelled from Dashiell's mansion, she was completely exposed. The deserted tram stop appeared like a mirage. Bryn collapsed onto the frozen bench, her body finally surrendering. With shaking hands, she opened her notebook. Months of work stared back at her. The first page showed a drawing from memory. September 17th, 3 months ago. The Campi shopping centre, the parking garage after closing. The night everything began. 3 men. A black van, a small boy fighting with desperate strength. Callum. She'd tried to scream, but her voice, stolen by the fire that killed her family 7 years ago, produced only strangled air. She'd tried to run forward to stop them, but one man had spotted her, cruel eyes, scarred cheek, and a tattoo on his neck that made her blood run cold. A raven. The same symbol from her nightmares, the Raven Brotherhood, the organization that had murdered her parents. Her 6-year-old brother. That had burned her voice from her throat and left her with nothing but survivor's guilt and silent rage. The scarred man had reached for his weapon, but Callum had bitten another captor hard enough to draw blood. In the chaos, Bryn had run, not away, toward purpose. She'd made a choice that night. If she couldn't speak, she would act. 3 days after witnessing the kidnapping, Bryn had applied to work at the Vance mansion. Background checks for maids were simple, just criminal records. She passed easily. She'd needed to get close to Dashiell. To find a way to communicate what she knew, to save Callum the way no one had saved her baby brother Quinn. But Dashiell was unreachable, drowning in grief so deep it had turned him into ice, and she was just a maid. Invisible. Voiceless. Nothing. So she'd investigated alone, followed threads through Helsinki's darkest corners where a silent girl raised no suspicion. She'd discovered things, terrible things, and she'd found Callum, alive, hidden. Tonight she'd been leaving him a coded message, scratches on his toy car marking a location. Something she'd taught him during stolen moments when Dashiell was too obsessed to notice his maid playing silent games with his son's memory. But now she'd been cast out, and the Brotherhood knew she existed. Headlights swept across the tram stop. Bryn's head snapped up. A black van, slowing, stopping. The same van from her nightmares. Through the windshield she saw him, the scarred man. His eyes locked onto hers. He smiled. Terror flooded her veins. She ran. Behind her, the van's engine roared to life. Her bare feet slipped on ice, but adrenaline kept her moving. She cut through an alley, vaulted a fence, her lungs screaming in the frozen air. The van's headlights followed. Closer. Over the next week, Dashiell Vance became a monster. He fired the head chef for burning toast, the groundskeeper for trimming hedges asymmetrically, a security guard for arriving 90 seconds late. His board of directors staged an intervention in the glass-walled conference room overlooking frozen Helsinki harbour. "You're out of control," his CFO Garrett said carefully. "This has to stop." Dashiell didn't look up from his laptop. "This meeting is over." "You fired that maid," Garrett pressed. "Bryn Holloway. Did you know she was living in a youth shelter before you hired her? Did you know she has no family, no one? Did you know it was -20 degrees when you threw her into the street without even— Get out!" Dashiell's fist slammed the mahogany table. His knuckles split open. Blood welled up, dripping onto quarterly reports. Garrett stood slowly, his face filled with disappointment. "I loved Callum too," he said quietly. "We all did. But Dashiell, wherever your son is right now, he wouldn't recognize what his father has become." The words hit like bullets. The door clicked shut. Dashiell sat alone in the boardroom for 3 hours, watching his blood stain the financial projections, thinking about nothing and everything. His phone shattered the silence. Rhett, head of security. "Sir, there's something you need to see. Now." 20 minutes later, Dashiell stood in the security control room, staring at a monitor. "This is from the day Callum was taken," Rhett explained, his voice careful. "We've reviewed this footage 100 times, but we were looking for vehicles, license plates, getaway routes. We weren't looking for her." The grainy parking garage footage showed the edge of the frame. A figure in a cleaning uniform. Watching, witnessing the kidnapping, then running toward the van, before one of the kidnappers spotted her and she fled. "Zoom in on the face," Dashiell whispered. Rhett did. The image pixelated, then sharpened. Bryn Holloway, no doubt. Dashiell's world tilted. "She applied to work at your house exactly 3 days after this was recorded," Rhett continued. "Sir, I think she witnessed the abduction. I think she knew something, and she tried to get close to you to help." The air left Dashiell's lungs. "Where is she now?" Dashiell's voice was barely audible. "Unknown. She listed no permanent address, just a P.O. box. No phone, no emergency contacts, no digital footprint. She's a complete ghost. Find her." The desperation in his own voice startled him. Use every resource we have. Check shelters, hospitals, everywhere. Find her now. Sir, we've been trying, but... Rhett hesitated. What if she was involved? What if getting close to you was part of... She tried to stop them. Dashiell grabbed the monitor. Look, she tried to save him and I... His voice broke. I threw her into the street like garbage. Just find her, he said hoarsely. Please. Rhett nodded and began making calls. Dashiell stood frozen, staring at the paused image of Bryn running toward danger while everyone else ran away. She'd been trying to save his son for months, and he'd repaid her with cruelty. 48 hours passed, no trace of Bryn Holloway. She'd vanished completely. Then, on the third morning, Rhett entered Dashiell's office with a tablet. We found something, street camera footage from the night she left. The video showed Bryn walking through snow in inadequate clothing. Timestamp, 11:47 p.m. She walked 6 blocks, stopped at a tram station. Then, 12:03 a.m., a black van appeared, slowed, stopped. Bryn ran, the van followed, the camera lost them in shadows. Dashiell's blood turned to ice. The same van, he whispered. We're running the partial plate now, but... Rhett's face was grim. Sir, if the kidnappers took her... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Dashiell had thrown out the only person who knew where Callum was, and now she was in the hands of monsters. Because of him. The woman who tried to save everything was the woman he'd condemned to die. Bryn's room had been cleared out within hours of her firing, her few belongings boxed up and sent to donation. Now, 3 days after discovering she'd witnessed the kidnapping, Dashiell tore through the storage room like a madman. Threadbare clothes spilled across concrete. Cheap toiletries scattered, a broken hairbrush, a faded photograph of people he assumed were her family. Nothing useful, nothing that could lead him to Callum. Sir, this is pointless, Rhett said from the doorway. If she had information, she would have... She tried to tell me, Dashiell's voice cracked. I slapped her notebook out of her hands. I wouldn't listen. He threw another box aside, then, wedged between wooden slats, something slim and hidden. A second notebook. His hands shook as he pulled it free. The first page was a calendar, dates marked in red ink. September 17th, the day Callum was taken, circled multiple times. Then other dates trailing forward, each with locations written in cramped handwriting. Surninen Warehouse, 11 p.m. Empty. Callio apartment, 3 men, 1 with scar. Pasila train station, package exchange. She'd been tracking them, the kidnappers. Alone, Dashiell turned the page and his heart stopped. Faces, detailed, precise portraits drawn with frightening accuracy. One man had a scar across his cheek and a raven tattoo on his neck. Another had dead eyes and a crooked nose. A third looked younger, nervous. Beneath each face, descriptions in English. Scar man equals leader. Drives black van, license SBK 842, speaks with Russian accent. More pages, maps of Helsinki with locations circled, and abandoned buildings marked, routes traced in different colored pens. And then, Dashiell's vision blurred. Drawings of Callum, recent drawings. Callum in a small room, Callum sleeping on a mattress. Callum playing with wooden blocks. Callum alive. The detail was too specific to be from memory. She'd seen him, recently. The notebook slipped from Dashiell's numb fingers. He collapsed against the cold storage wall, a sound escaping his throat that was half sob, half roar. What have I done? The words echoed off concrete. God, what have I done? Rhett picked up the notebook, flipping through pages, his expression darkening with each one. She knew where Callum was, Rhett said quietly. She was building a case, planning a rescue. And I threw her out. Dashiell's voice was hollow. I threw out the only person who could save my son. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Drop everything, find Bryn Holloway, use every resource, check shelters, hospitals, morgues if you have to. Find her. Sir, there's something else. Rhett pointed to the raven tattoo in one of the drawings. I've seen this symbol before. Let me run it through our database. 10 minutes later, they had a match. The Raven Brotherhood, a criminal organization linked to trafficking, extortion, and child abduction across multiple countries. And according to police files, they were connected to an unsolved arson case 7 years ago. A family named Holloway, parents and a 6-year-old boy killed. One survivor, a teenage girl who lost her voice from smoke inhalation and trauma. Bryn. The same people who destroyed her family took Callum, Dashiell whispered. It gets worse, Rhett said grimly. If she recognized them, if they know she's been investigating them. He didn't finish. Dashiell stood abruptly, the notebook clutched in his hands. We're going to the police, now. Sir, if the Brotherhood knows we're coming, they'll disappear. They'll move Callum, kill Bryn if they haven't already. Then what do you suggest? Dashiell's voice rose. She's out there alone, in the hands of the people who murdered her entire family. We can't just… His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered with trembling hands. Mr. Vance. The voice was cold, accented, Russian. We have something that belongs to you. 2 somethings, actually. In the background, Dashiell heard it. A child crying. Miley Callum. He gripped the phone so hard it cracked. If you hurt him, I swear… You're in no position to make threats. We'll be in touch with our demands. And Mr. Vance, the girl, she's caused us considerable trouble. I thought you should know. She won't be a problem much longer. The line went dead. Dashiell's world collapsed. Detective Sloane Mercer had worked the Callum Vance case from day one. She'd learned to hate billionaires. Not because they were rich, but because their money made them believe they were above procedure, above patience, above the grinding work of actual investigation. Dashiell Vance had been the worst, demanding, accusatory, threatening her badge when she didn't produce miracles. So when he appeared at the Helsinki police station at 6 a.m., looking like hell, she was ready to throw him out. Then she saw the notebook. How long have you had this? Her voice was sharp. I found it yesterday. It belonged to my maid, Bryn Holloway. His face was haggard. She witnessed the abduction. She's been tracking them for months. Sloane flipped through pages, her detective's mind cataloguing evidence. And you're just bringing this to me now? I didn't know. His voice broke. I fired her, threw her out. She tried to show me and I wouldn't listen. Despite herself, Sloane felt sympathy flicker. Where is she? Missing. The kidnappers have her. They called me. They have both her and Callum. Sloane's blood ran cold. Within 30 minutes, Sloane's office looked like a war room. The notebook sketches matched known associates of the Raven Brotherhood, a criminal network operating across Nordic countries. High-value kidnappings, trafficking, extortion. We've been trying to infiltrate this organization for 5 years, Sloane explained, pointing to photos on her evidence board. They're ghosts. Witnesses disappear, evidence vanishes, someone powerful is protecting them. The man with the scar, Dashiell pointed to Bryn's drawing. Who is he? We don't know. We've never gotten a clean image of their leadership. She held up the sketch. Until now, this is the most detailed description we've ever had. She pulled another file. The Holloway fire in Kouvola. We suspected Brotherhood involvement but couldn't prove it. And the father worked as an accountant for a shipping company. We think he discovered they were being used for illegal transport. So they killed his family, Dashiell said quietly. Everyone except Bryn, who apparently decided to wage a one-woman war. Sloane's respect grew. These locations, these observations, she built a real case. Can you use it? Can you find them? Before Sloane could answer, her phone rang. She listened, her face draining of color. We have a situation. The Van Hankouping in Lahti Bay was frozen solid except where the body had broken through. Dashiell stood on the shore, watching the coroner work, his soul fracturing with every second. Female, slight build, blonde hair. No. The word came out strangled. No, please. Sir, we don't have identification yet, Rhett said gently. It might not be. She was running from them because of me. Dashiell's voice cracked. I sent her straight to them. Sloane approached, her expression carefully neutral. It's not her. The relief nearly buckled his knees. But it is another victim, Sloane continued. Another girl, 16 years old, missing for 3 months. Her jaw tightened. The Brotherhood's been busy. Dashiell stared at the body being loaded into the coroner's van. This could have been Bryn. Might still be. Tomorrow or the next day. "I'm done waiting for legal channels," he said. "I'm going after them." "That's illegal. You can't." "They have my son. They have the woman who tried to save my son." His voice was steel. "I don't care about legal anymore." Sloane studied him for a long moment, then handed him a piece of paper. "What's this?" Dashiell asked. "Addresses, 3 locations that match the ones in Bryn's notebook. We haven't had enough evidence for warrants, but—" She met his eyes. "Officially, I'm telling you to stand down and let us handle this. And unofficially, I have a daughter. If someone took her and the system moved too slow," her voice softened, "I'd want someone to break the rules for me." Dashiell looked at the addresses, his hands steadied, purpose replaced despair. "Don't make me regret this," Sloane said, "and bring them both home." "I will. One more thing." She pulled out a file. "We traced the phone call. It pinged off a tower in Pasila, industrial district. There's an old meatpacking plant that's been abandoned for years." She showed him a map. Bryn marked it in her notebook 3 times. Whatever's happening, it's centered there. Dashiell memorized every detail, then called Rhett. "Assemble the team. Full tactical gear. We're going in tonight." The abandoned meatpacking plant squatted in the industrial wasteland like a tomb. Rusted metal, broken windows. Snow piled against walls covered in graffiti and decay. Dashiell arrived with 6 ex-military security personnel, all armed despite Finland's strict weapons laws. They'd face legal consequences later. First, they'd face the monsters inside. 2 entrances, Rhett whispered, studying the building through night vision. Front loading dock and a side door near the old freezer section. "Heat signatures?" Dashiell asked. 5 people inside. 3 on the main floor, 2 in the basement level. Dashiell's heart hammered. "Can you tell if any are children?" "Negative. Too much interference from the old equipment." They moved in formation, weapons drawn, every shadow a potential threat. The side door was locked, but Rhett bypassed it in seconds. Inside, the smell hit them first, rust, mold, and something organic and wrong. Old meat hooks hung from ceiling rails like skeletal fingers. They advanced through the main processing floor. Emergency lighting cast everything in sickly green. "This way." Rhett pointed to a stairwell leading down. That's when Dashiell saw it, scratched into the wall, faint but unmistakable. A small bird drawing. Bryn's mark. "She's been here," he breathed. "She's leaving us a trail." They followed more marks down into the basement. Old freezer rooms, storage areas, a labyrinth of passages, more birds, more arrows. Then the mark stopped. They stood at an intersection of 3 corridors, no symbols, no guidance. "Which way?" one of the security team whispered. Dashiell closed his eyes, trying to think like Bryn. Silent, observant, always watching. Then he heard it, faint, rhythmic, tapping, coming from the right corridor. They followed the sound through crumbling passages, down stairs that shouldn't exist, into sections that felt forgotten by time. The tapping grew louder, then stopped. They rounded a corner into a small room, and found Bryn. She was chained to an exposed pipe, wrists raw and bleeding, face bruised, clothes torn, but her eyes, those luminous grey eyes, blazed with unbroken will. When she saw Dashiell, emotions flickered across her face. Surprise, relief, and something harder to read. She lifted her chained hands and pointed frantically deeper into the basement, making urgent pushing gestures. "Go. Leave. Danger. We're not leaving without you." Dashiell moved toward her. She shook her head violently, pointed again, and mouthed a word he could read on her lips. "Callum." His heart stopped. "He's here?" She nodded, tears streaming, and pointed to what looked like a solid wall. No. A hidden door, camouflaged as concrete. Dashiell was moving toward it when Rhett grabbed his arm. "Sir, company." Footsteps, multiple, coming fast. They were surrounded. The Brotherhood's men came in fast, 4 of them, armed, shocked to find intruders. Dashiell's team reacted with precision. Gunfire erupted in the confined space, deafening and chaotic. Dashiell threw himself over Bryn, shielding her with his body as bullets sparked off concrete. She struggled beneath him, still trying to push him toward the hidden door, thinking of Callum even as the world exploded. Rhett took down 2 men. Another guard wrestled a third to the ground. The fourth, the scarred man with the raven tattoo, the leader from Bryn's drawings, pulled out a detonator. "Everyone freezes or I bring this whole section down." His finish was Russian accented. "You think you're heroes? You're corpses." Dashiell stood slowly, hands raised. Behind the man, he saw Bryn frantically picking at her chains with something. A piece of metal, a makeshift lockpick. "You don't want to do this," Dashiell said, keeping the man's attention. "Kill us. You lose your leverage. My son is worth millions in ransom." The man laughed. "Your son? Already sold? Being transported north tonight. You're too late, billionaire." The words hit like bullets. But then Bryn was free. Moving with shocking speed despite injuries, she lunged at the hidden door and wrenched it open. Inside, a small room. Empty. Dashiell's hope collapsed, but Bryn shook her head, pointing at the floor. There, a hatch, poorly concealed. She dropped to her knees and pulled it open. Ladder rungs descended into darkness. "He's lying," Dashiell realized. "Callum's still here." The scarred man swung his gun toward Bryn. Dashiell didn't think, just moved. Tackled the man as the gun fired, the bullet going wide. They crashed into the wall, and Dashiell, who'd never fought in his life, discovered what grief and rage could do. By the time Rhett pulled him off, the Brotherhood leader was unconscious. "Go," Rhett said quietly. "We'll handle this. Go get your son." Dashiell scrambled to the hatch. Bryn was already descending. Together they climbed down into the darkness. The ladder descended 15 feet into a tunnel that shouldn't exist. Old, Soviet era. Part of Helsinki's forgotten Cold War infrastructure. Bryn moved ahead with certainty, despite her injuries. She'd mapped every inch of this hell. Dashiell followed, his expensive suit ruined by mud and worse. The tunnel was claustrophobic, forcing them to half-crawl through sections where the ceiling had partially collapsed. His heart hammered against his ribs. Callum is down here." The air grew colder. Their breath formed clouds in the beam of his flashlight. Bryn stopped suddenly, holding up her hand. She pointed to the wall. Fresh scratches. Recent. A child's height. Dashiell's throat tightened. "He's alive. He's really alive." Bryn nodded, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her face. She touched the scratches gently, reverently, then continued forward. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber, another Cold War bunker, filled with rusted equipment and frozen puddles. 3 doorways led out, but Bryn didn't hesitate. She went straight to the middle door, then stopped. Turned to Dashiell. Her hands moved in slow, deliberate gestures. He didn't understand sign language, but he understood this. "Be gentle. He's scared. He's been so scared." Dashiell's vision blurred. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Bryn opened the door. The room beyond was small but had been made almost comfortable. A mattress with clean blankets, toys, books, a small heater running. They'd kept Callum alive, healthy, valuable, and there, curled on the mattress, clutching a wooden toy car. Callum. The word broke coming out. His son looked up, 6 years old, thinner than Dashiell remembered, dark circles under his eyes, a wariness no child should possess. For one terrible moment, Callum didn't recognize him. Then, "Dad?" The word was uncertain, fragile. Dashiell crossed the space in 2 strides, collapsing to his knees, pulling his son into his arms. Callum was solid and real and alive. "I'm sorry." The words came out as sobs. "I'm so sorry. I've got you. You're safe now. You're safe." Callum clung to him, small body shaking. "I waited. Bryn said you'd come. She said you'd understand the code on the car and come save me. I waited so long, Dad." Dashiell looked up through tears. Bryn stood in the doorway, swaying with exhaustion and pain. She'd left the coded message on Callum's toy car before he fired her. She'd been planning the rescue even then, and even after he'd thrown her out, even while being hunted, she'd kept watch over his son. "I don't deserve this," his voice failed. "I don't deserve you saving him after what I did." Bryn pulled out her small notebook, wrote quickly, held it up. He deserved saving. That's all that mattered, not forgiveness, just truth. Dashiell stood, still holding Callum, and reached his free hand to Bryn. She hesitated, then took it. Together they climbed out of the darkness. The next 72 hours blurred together. Police interviews. Medical examinations, media chaos outside the hospital. Callum was physically unharmed but would need years of therapy. The Brotherhood members were arrested, their network exposed across 3 countries. Detective Sloane Mercer became a national hero. She graciously shared credit with civilian assistance. Dashiell's illegal raid was quietly buried by officials who knew prosecuting a father for saving his kidnapped son would be political suicide. And Bryn disappeared. She'd given her statement through a sign language interpreter, endured medical treatment for her injuries, then vanished from the hospital while Dashiell was meeting with lawyers. He'd saved his son, but lost the woman who'd made it possible. It took Dashiell 3 days to find her. She was in Kuvala, at a cemetery on the city's outskirts, standing before 3 graves: Marcus Holloway, Diana Holloway, Quinn Holloway, father, mother, little brother. Snow fell softly as Dashiell approached. She didn't turn, but he knew she'd heard him. "The police told me everything," he said quietly. "Your father discovered the Brotherhood was using his employer's ships for trafficking. He was going to expose them. So they killed your family, made it look like an accident." Bryn's shoulders tensed. "You were 16. You survived, but the smoke damage and trauma took your voice. 2 years in hospitals and psychiatric care. When you aged out of the system, you had nothing." He moved beside her, looking at the small grave. Quinn Holloway died at age 6, the same age as Callum. "You saw them take my son, and you saw your brother. You couldn't save Quinn, but you could save Callum." Bryn finally turned to look at him. Her grey eyes were dry but infinitely sad. She wrote in her notebook, "I couldn't let another family break like mine. I couldn't let another little boy be afraid in the dark." "You gave everything," Dashiell said, "and I gave you nothing but cruelty. I can't fix what I did, but I can spend my life trying to make it right." She wrote, "You don't owe me anything. Callum is safe. That's enough." "It's not enough. Not for me." He pulled out an envelope. "A bank account in your name. Enough that you'll never scrub floors or live in shelters again. Please." Bryn looked at it like it might burn her. She wrote, "I don't want your guilt money. It's not guilt, it's gratitude, respect, recognition." He set it on the gravestone. "And there's something else. Our Callum wants to see you." That made her look up sharply. "He asks for you every day, says you're his friend. You played games with him, taught him codes, made him feel less alone." His voice cracked. "He wants you at his welcome home party. He made me promise to find you." She shook her head. "I don't belong in your world. Maybe not mine, but you belong in his." She hesitated. In that hesitation, he saw the truth. She'd loved his son, genuinely. Finally, she nodded. 2 weeks later, the Vance mansion was transformed. No longer a tomb of grief, but filled with light and laughter. Callum's welcome home party was small, just close friends and the people who'd helped bring him back. Detective Sloane Mercer, Rhett and the security team, Garrett, who'd never stopped believing, and Bryn. She arrived quietly, wearing a simple blue dress, her blonde hair down for the first time Dashiell had seen. She looked terrified. Then Callum spotted her. "Bryn!" He launched himself across the room into her arms. She caught him, spinning him around, her face transformed by pure joy. For a moment, the haunted look vanished. She was just a young woman holding a child she'd fought hell to save. Dashiell watched from across the room, something unfamiliar warming his chest. Not guilt. Hope. Later, after cake and presents, Dashiell found Bryn in the garden. She was sketching in her notebook, Callum playing with other children, his laughter captured in quick, sure strokes. "You're incredibly talented," Dashiell said softly. She startled, then wrote, "It's how I speak. I'm starting to understand that. Actions. Article. Everything but words." She nodded. He sat beside her on the bench. "I want to offer you something. Not money this time, a position. Head of my personal security division. You think like they do. You know how they operate. You could save other families." She stared at him. Wrote, "I'm a maid with no voice, no credentials, no degree. You're the bravest person I've ever met. You built a case that 5 years of police work couldn't crack. You saved my son when everyone else had given up." His voice intensified. "Just credentials don't measure courage." She looked at Callum, then wrote, "I'll think about it." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. Progress. That night, after guests left, Bryn stayed to help clean up. Old habits. Dashiell found her in the kitchen washing dishes. "You don't have to do that," he said gently. "You're a guest." She smiled slightly, kept washing. He picked up a towel and dried beside her. They worked in comfortable silence. Then Bryn pulled out her notebook. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why did you really fire me that night?" Dashiell's hands stilled. I thought you were trying to steal from my son's memory, taking something precious that wasn't yours." "And now?" "Now I know you were trying to save him. You were leaving him a message, a code, a promise." He set down the towel. "I fired you because I was drowning in grief and rage, because I'd stopped seeing people as human. Because I was so broken I couldn't recognize someone trying to help." She wrote, "Grief makes us cruel sometimes. That doesn't excuse what I did." "No, but it explains it. Can you forgive me?" She looked at him for a long moment, then wrote, "I'm trying." It was honest, raw, and somehow it meant more than easy absolution. Spring came to Helsinki like a resurrection. Ice melted, flowers emerged, the city transformed from monochrome to color. Dashiell stood in his garden, a space he'd ignored for years, watching Callum play. His son laughed, really laughed, running through the sprinkler. Bryn sat on a blanket nearby, sketching. She came twice a week now. Not as a maid, as family. Dashiell had offered her everything, a house, the security position, a place on his board. She'd refused it all. What she'd accepted, a small apartment near the waterfront. Paid from the account he'd set up. Online classes in criminal justice. And time with Callum, who'd appointed her his official best friend. The title meant more to her than money ever could. "She's good for him," Garrett said, appearing with beers. "Good for you too." Dashiell accepted one. "I almost destroyed the person who saved everything that matters." "But you didn't. You found her. You're trying to make it right." "I threw her into the street in winter. I don't know if that can be made right." "Maybe not. But you can be better. That's what she taught you. Actions speak louder than words." Later, after sunset, Dashiell brought out lemonade and cookies. Callum grabbed 3 cookies and ran off to examine a beetle, leaving Dashiell and Bryn alone. "Thank you," he said simply, "for coming, for staying, for being patient with him, with me." She wrote, "He makes it easy. You're harder work." He laughed, actually laughed. She wrote again, "You're different than before, less Ice King, more human. Losing everything and getting it back changes a person." He looked at her seriously. "You changed me, Bryn, showed me what courage looks like, what sacrifice means. I was buried in pain and couldn't see anyone else's. I'm trying to be better. Are you? Or are you trying to earn forgiveness?" The question struck deep. Is there a difference? Yes. One is about you. One is about actually changing. You're right. I want to actually change. The man who fired you, who threw you out, I don't want to be him anymore. Then don't be. Is it that easy? No, but it's that simple. Callum ran back, launching into Bryn's lap, showing her the beetle with enthusiastic detail. She set down her notebook and gave him complete attention, pointing to parts of the beetle, nodding as he chattered. Dashiell watched them together, 2 people who'd survived hell, who'd found each other in darkness, who'd saved him from becoming a monster. "Bryn," he said softly, "I know you said no to the job offer, but I have a different proposal." She looked up, curious. "The Callum Vance Foundation, for families of missing children, advocacy, resources, support." He met her eyes. "I want you to run it, not because you owe me, because you understand what they're going through, because you have the skills and the heart." She stared at him. "Think about it," he said. "No pressure, just think about it." Slowly she nodded. 2 years later, Dashiell Vance stood at a podium in Finland's Parliament building, testifying for legislation to protect trafficking victims and provide resources for disabled individuals. Beside him, translating into sign language, Bryn Holloway, now a certified victims advocate and consultant to the Nordic Human Trafficking Task Force. She'd found her voice after all. Not the one stolen by smoke and trauma, but a different voice, One that spoke through action, advocacy, the hundreds of victims she'd helped save. The Raven Brotherhood was dismantled, leaders imprisoned. But Bryn knew there would always be others. So she dedicated her life to fighting them. And Dashiell dedicated his fortune to helping her. The Helsinki Tribune ran a feature. From Maid to Hero, the woman who saved a billionaire's son and changed Finland. Bryn refused interviews, but she kept the article in her notebook next to a drawing of Callum, now 8, happy, healing. Some scars never fully fade, but they can become part of a new story, where the voiceless find power, where the invisible become unforgettable, where cruelty transforms into compassion, where a mute maid, a broken billionaire, and a lost little boy become family. Forged not by blood, but by choices made in darkest moments, by the decision to save rather than surrender, to speak through action when words fail, to see humanity in those the world overlooks. Dashiell never forgot the night he threw Bryn into the snow. The memory haunted him, humbled him, but he also never forgot the moment she took his hand in that underground prison and led him to his son. The moment she proved that strength isn't about what you say. It's about what you do when no one is listening. On Callum's 9th birthday, he asked for something unusual, not toys or games. "Can we visit Quinn's grave?" he asked Bryn. "I want to say thank you." Bryn's eyes filled with tears. Together, Bryn, Dashiell, and Callum, they travelled to Kuvula. Callum placed flowers on Quinn Holloway's grave. "Thank you for sharing your sister," he said to the headstone. "She saved my life. I'll try to make it count." Bryn knelt beside him, and Callum hugged her tight. Dashiell stood back, watching, his son, alive, the woman who'd made it possible, healing, and himself, changed, not perfect, but better. And isn't that what redemption really is? Not erasing the past, but learning from it. Not demanding forgiveness, but earning it through change. Not speaking empty words, but proving truth through action. Bryn had taught him that. A mute maid who spoke louder than anyone he'd ever known, and he would spend the rest of his life listening. Lessons from this story. 1. Never judge someone's value by their voice or status. Bryn had no voice, no power, no platform, but she had courage that saved lives. 2. Grief can make us cruel, but it doesn't have to define us. Dashiell's pain turned him into someone unrecognizable, but he found his way back. 3. Real strength is quiet. Bryn didn't need words or weapons. Her actions spoke volumes. 4. Second chances require action, not just apology. Dashiell didn't just say sorry, he changed his entire life. 5. The most invisible people often see the most. Those society overlooks hold wisdom and strength the powerful miss. 6. Trauma can either break us or forge us into something stronger. Bryn's tragedy became her purpose. 7. Family isn't just blood, it's chosen through love and sacrifice. This story reminds us to look beyond surface judgments, to value action over words, and to recognize that heroes don't always announce themselves with grand gestures. Sometimes they work in silence, cleaning rooms and saving lives, waiting for someone to finally see them. Cedar Drama, where every story changes you. Subscribe for more powerful stories of redemption, courage, and the human spirit.